Hello everyone and welcome back to the VCO Esports studio. I'm delighted to have your company again. My name is Arjuna Kankipati, and as always, we've got another fascinating guest to talk to here in the world of sim racing. This is someone we've talked to a long time ago. It's been more than 2 years since we talked to James Baldwin, the world's fastest gamer, about how things have changed for him in the last 2 years, and he's coming off what has been a very successful 2022 and hopefully heading into a quiet off-season, getting charged up with the batteries. How are you feeling, James? Delighted to have you back here on the VCO Esports studio.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure. I'm fine. Just in the middle of the back end of the esports season. All the series are coming to an end now, so no, I'm good. I'm happy to be on the show again.
Now you can actually breathe a little bit. Let's start by talking about what you've done most recently, I guess, coming off the FIA Motorsport Games, where you went to France to represent Great Britain in person for esports. How proud a moment was that for you, walking at the opening ceremony and getting ready for the spectacle that was that entire event?
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It wasn't the first time I've been, so I went to the one 3 years ago in Rome before the pandemic year. So it wasn't completely new, but this time was a bit different because it was on a game I actually knew how to play properly on ACC instead of Gran Turismo. um, and yeah, I was just a bit more experienced, and it was a great event though. Like, yeah, as you say, very proud moment to represent your nation in your own discipline. And obviously came away with a gold medal, so really good.
In terms as well of the atmosphere, you say you've been there before, but I've just experienced my first live event in person this year, and I always feel like there's a different camaraderie between the drivers. Even though you're competing against one another, you talk as though you're friends before the race. I got to ask how that translates with your experience now in the real world, with the full season in the British GT and just coming off the 24 hours of Spa earlier this year.
Yeah, it's definitely nicer, I think, in person. Anything in life really, because there's more atmosphere. Not talking through a screen and or over a headset and stuff. And yeah, the Motorsport Games atmosphere was great. Like, there was hundreds of people genuinely in the room watching our esports races, which like kind of blew me away. Like, before 3 years ago, that wasn't really the case. And I think obviously that's like sim racing's um, grown and boomed a bit over the COVID period and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, I even before like the pandemic year, I preferred LAN events generally. Like, it's a bit of an equalizer, It doesn't matter what equipment you've got at home and stuff. You come and everyone's on the same kit. Whoever can adapt to the scenario, the rig, if because none of the rigs feel the same. There's always a little difference here and there, and it's whoever can sort of just make the best of the situation. So it was really refreshing to go back to a LAN environment. Yeah.
I was a bit jealous watching on, I'm not going to lie, especially since our producer Mike Yao was there as well, and we were talking just before we went live about how surprised you were there to see him there for, I think, the
Yeah.
sixth time this year. Let's go back, though, to 2020. We last talked to you July 6th, so 856 days ago. You were in the middle of your full season in the
Blimey.
2020 British GT Series. Yeah, what a long time ago and how time really flies. Let's talk about what it meant to you winning the Silver Cup Championship, given what it meant for you to be in that series.
Yeah, British GT was like, you know, the biggest thing I've ever had in my career. A whole season of real GT racing. I suppose, it gave me a lot of exposure. A lot of people sort of, if they know my name or whatever, it's from that. Being on a massive platform, a British GT is a well recognised national series, and GT3 as well, not GT4. So it was a big jump. We didn't win silver, but I think we finished third. But we definitely should have won it, and to be honest, we could have won the overall championship as well. I thought we were quite unlucky over the course of the season. But yeah, I look back at it with like a smile and stuff, but I do miss it. A full season's racing. I've done one race this year, the Spa 24. It feels like a blink in the or a click. It went by so quickly. Whereas a season, you can really get your teeth into it and make the most of it. So yeah, I do miss it. Hopefully I can do a full season again soon.
So what was 2021 like for you then? Focusing once more again on esports, which I'm sure felt a little bit familiar given how your first foray into sim racing was because of the difficulties of continuing the journey in real world motorsports. Won a lot of titles, had a lot of success, announced as the BRDC Rising Star midway through the year as well. But how hard and how much focus was there for you behind the scenes trying to get back behind the wheel of a real car?
Well, 2021 overall was pretty rough, to be honest, because like it was sort of a come down year after a really good year with British GT and stuff. I was so naive, inexperienced. I didn't really know how to deal on a business level to deal with people to try and get an opportunity to get back in a race car. I didn't have a clue. I literally was, you know, I suppose a kid who won World's Fastest Gamer, who was just a gamer. That's literally it. Working a part-time engineering job and thrown into a race car. And at the end of it, then I had to sort of like figure out how was I going to get back into a seat, and I didn't have a clue. So 2021 was like just a year of figuring it out, trying to understand how the industry really works from a driver's point of view. How do they make their own opportunities for themselves to be in a seat? Because there's only a select few that actually race and get paid for it. Factory drivers or people in Formula One. There's a very, very select few. Everyone else has to try and make that opportunity for themselves. So yeah, it was a pretty rough year because I didn't really know what I was doing and stuff. I was doing esports, and I obviously enjoy doing esports. I always have, and probably always will for the foreseeable future. So yeah.
And I mean, it, like you said, led to this year where you got the opportunity to drive in the 24 hours of Spa. How much work for you then behind the scenes transformed from 2021 to 2022 in mindset or your approach? Because you say you struggled with the business side, you were able to find some support and go racing once again, and this time in one of the biggest races of the entire year.
Yeah, huge opportunity to do the Spa 24-hour, biggest GT race in the world. People say it's like harder than Le Mans because obviously at Le Mans you got the straights to sort of relax and stuff. Um, yeah, somehow kind of crafted that opportunity via a partner of mine called Travel Planet, and we did the race. And from my point of view, it went really well. Our car didn't finish, but and that's still an ongoing thing. So hopefully, there's more to come. Because I feel like I just really want to get back in a full-time race seat in real life. Having had that taste of it in 2020, I really want to be doing it for year on year consistently. So, but yeah, this year has gone. To start with in esports, it didn't go that well. I qualified for the EROC final. I basically finished last because I made an absolute dog's dinner of it. So that wasn't a good start. And then Le Mans Virtual, we were running P2 or P3 and we ran out of fuel. So that's another reason why the start of the year wasn't very good. And then as the year went on, it got better and better. Last 3 or 4 months have been really good. Everything's just sort of fallen my way, and I've managed to win a few things. And yeah, overall though, I've really enjoyed this year. It's been good. Obviously a little bit of real racing, but I've enjoyed taking a step up, I think, in performance in sim racing.
You say a lot of success recently, a couple of titles in SRO, the win in Le Mans Virtual this past weekend with the Mercedes AMG Petronas team as well. But I do want to ask, going back to the real racing, how important is it for you, having had that experience at Spa, but also in the esports arena where you dominated the race there on pole by almost a full second, with SRO embracing esports a little bit more? Do you see more opportunities for yourself to try and find full-time seats in Europe in GT3 cars?
It definitely helps. I mean, first of all, I wouldn't say it's impressive because no, the majority of the other real drivers don't sim race that often. So if I didn't put it on pole and if I didn't win, there'd be something really wrong. Because to be honest, I do this every day. They don't do it every day, so it's one of those. But it does. I mean, first of all, SRO embracing esports in that way, I think, is very good and shows that. Well, it gives it more credibility, first of all, but it shows that uh, they think there's an audience for it and all the rest of it. But from my point of view, I do think it adds a sort of value, you know, as a racing driver, trying to get a seat or trying to maybe get a cheaper seat, get the team to reduce their fee to drive for them that season, because in effect, I could sort of semi-guarantee that I'd be up there in all of the sim races in the real series, the GT Pro Esports or whatever it's called. And you win €6,000 per race. So if you do win every race, for example, you win say €30,000. It's quite a lot of money, and you can say, in my situation, I could say with a lot of confidence that I'd be up there in every single one of those races, winning some sort of prize money. So yeah, I think it's good, obviously from where I sit, but generally, I think it's a good thing.
I really like that as well. It's something I really am excited about when it comes to SRO and the potential for someone like you, maybe even Lauren Heinrich, these drivers who are so talented in esports to find opportunities in the real world. I want to ask you a question, though. Here in VCO, we have the Esports Racing League. We've had you participate in a handful of our competitions, but it's a platform and a tournament that embraces all of the simulators and all of the games. You've been someone that's been around sim racing for long enough that you've dabbled in basically all of the platforms. How adaptable do you think you have to be to try and find speed across all the different titles?
Very. I mean, the general gist of it is they are all the same, but they are so different from the way you set the game up, the settings you use on the wheel you've got, on the pedals you've got, the way it feels, the driving technique you have to kind of adapt in whatever game you're driving. So, I mean, a good example, right, is Assetto Corsa and Assetto Corsa Competizione are my favorite games, or the games I'm best at, because my natural driving style suits those games. Just, I don't have to think about it. I can just go on, and it's like my tire wear's good. I'm using the correct amount of each tire, and it's like it just works. Whereas if I go on to like R Factor, so you got to think ACC and AC are quite understeery games, or you don't really use the front tires that much. Whereas R Factor is the opposite. It's quite an oversteery game. So I really struggle when I go to R Factor with rear tire wear. I just burn the rears out. So what I've had to do in LMBS recently is sort of just try and find a way to use more of the front tires so the rear tires are sort of evened out. So I had to learn basically to put more steering lock going into corners, and it's not natural at all. But eventually, over lots of hours, it's worked, and my tire wear now is not too bad on R Factor. So little bits like that across all games, from game to game, it's all different. And yeah, you have to be adaptable and just have an open mind, to be able to do that.
Do you find that you need a couple of days as well to kind of dial that in? Because you've
Oh
had
yeah.
two of your SRO titles and then had a couple of weeks off to focus back on LMVS. But I've been so impressed by a couple of drivers in the ERL where basically no matter where we are, they're always up at the front. You find that you need a couple of weeks to get back into the groove?
Ideally, yeah. I mean, sometimes time doesn't allow that. But if I jumped on that night with no practice, say on R Factor, I'd probably struggle. But on ACC, I'd probably be alright. It depends what game it is. I'm more likely to be at the front on ACC than I would be on R Factor. But ideally, yeah, you'd like a couple of weeks to practice on whatever you're practicing for. Now that sim racing, the level's so high, you do need that much prep.
Let's talk a little bit then about 2022 and your SRO campaign, both in the endurance season where you had some teammates, and then in the sprint series where you were by yourself. It was quite successful. You say you struggled at the early part, but by the time we got into the summer and midway through the year, you really were finding your form.
It was a good year. I couldn't believe how well it went. To be fair, we had the McLaren for both sprint and endurance. McLaren in years gone by on ACC, I mean, BOP first of all is it's an argument that's across all sim racing series that have BOP. McLaren in years gone by has generally been a strong car in whatever conditions, whatever track. I felt this year it wasn't as strong. It was lacking in a lot of areas, especially like the power. Like I think there was a bit of a power nerf, but it was still a decent car. Don't get me wrong, but I don't think it was what it used to be. So I wasn't expecting to go and win both titles. Um, Sprint was like a solid year. Only had one win, no poles, just consistent. Across the board, points every round. Other drivers, got tangled up in crashes and stuff, and somehow won that. And then endurance, we just nailed it the whole season with like every pit stop, every quali start. Everything was nailed, and yeah, we really deserved to win that one, I think, because there was one mistake. I think my teammate had a little bit of an incident in the final race, but overall it was faultless, and it was a good season.
I did kind of want to ask about that final race because that was my first opportunity to kind of watch you guys in action from the commentary booth, and I did notice that McLaren, you had to really find some strategy calls to work its way forward. So you say the car was, really starting to change compared to the pace that you had earlier. How much of a difficult time did you have in that final race, and how much of a help was it having the rain to come and throw a spoil into the wrench about every hour or so?
I was grueling. I mean, the rain, we needed the rain. If there was no rain, it would have been really tough. We just had no raw, dry pace. And it was like wet, dry the whole 24 hours pretty much. And it was a nightmare of a race. Like my PC, the PSU, the power unit blew up like 2 in the morning when I was sleeping. So I woke up, came on to do my next stint, and my PC was just dead. It wasn't really. It was just completely dead. So I had to unplug it, and I had a spare, like, I call it a streaming PC, but I don't really stream that much. And it's just about good enough to run ACC. So I hooked it up, did some practice and stuff, had to re-download the game onto it, and then I was like, well, let's do a stint and hopefully it lasts. So we did the final 12 hours with this PC that I'm not particularly, I wasn't very comfortable with George and Eamon, and like doing a 24-hour with three people is rough. And then Murphy hit a puddle on the exit of the pit lane, and we lost a lot of time. We thought we blew it at that point. We had a lot of damage, but we clawed it back over the last few hours and got the dub. But yeah, it was a horrible race, to be honest.
That's what endurance racing is all about. And
Yeah,
you
it
talk
is. Yeah,
about
yeah.
it is. You talk about consistency, right? I always say on commentary, and I feel like I am a broken record when I say it, it's not the wins that win championships, it's the consistency. And I think consistency is what got you the win in Le Mans Virtual at Spa, because you ran a faultless race along with the team at the Mercedes AMG crew and ended up outlasting all of those in the Ardennes Mountain.
Yeah, I mean that team. I'm pretty new there. Just for the Le Mans Virtual Series, I'm obviously a Veloce driver, but for Le Mans Virtual, I'm Mercedes, and um, it's eye-opening to see the level that a team like Mercedes works at in terms of setup development, strategy, the equipment they use, and it's just different gravy, to be honest. Like, it's so good. And I mean, I enjoyed obviously the first two rounds to an extent. They didn't go very well from a result point of view, but I knew eventually there was going to be a good result. And Spa, like, we were quick the whole quali, the whole race. Strategy really won us the race, as you say. We thought Coanda were gonna. Uh, we thought they had a trick up their sleeve or something, because they don't usually make mistakes in that department. But yeah, we just got it. We just nailed the strategy and made one less pit stop than Coanda, and got the win. So
I love endurance racing for that as well, because the strategy becomes such a important factor. Looking forward for the rest of the year, of course, maybe a handful more races in the esports realm, but I have to assume an opportunity to recharge the batteries. Any
yes,
exciting holiday plans that you want to share with the viewers?
yeah. Well, I mean, it's not really a holiday, but Friday I go to the Gumball 3000 rally, which is quite a famous rally. It's different location every year, but that's with Veloce. So I'm going with Super GT or Steve Brown for 10 days, which is going to be something else. Going down in the Middle East, driving from Dubai all the way around to Abu Dhabi in some mental cars. Like, that's going to be really fun. I can't wait for that. But yeah, I've got one more race, Le Mans Virtual Series Round 4 at Sebring with Mercedes. And that's it for the year. And yeah, you're right. I need a break, like a good couple of weeks off of just not even looking at the sim, and come back to it in 23 fresh.
And let's talk goals very quickly for 2023. Of course, I think it sounds like Le Mans Virtual and the 24 hours of Le Mans Virtual is definitely a goal for you to try and get redemption for next year. But what else? I'm sure, like you say, the goal is to be in a full-time seat in a real car next year, but I'm sure you've got some objectives still in the esports world to try and get to.
Exactly. So goal number one definitely is a full season of racing. Hopefully at GT World Challenge Europe level, or something like that. But in esports, well, first of all, do hopefully as well as I've done this year. But maybe just adapting to the scene a bit. Like looking at, I don't want to just do ACC AC, you get in the form of the V10R League or LMBS, because that's what I've done like the last 2 years now. I mean, there's new stuff on the horizon, isn't there? There's Ren Sport on the horizon. Maybe if I'm not real racing, I'll have more time on my hands, so I can, I don't know. I need to. I'm yet to look at 23 really and the goals and the targets, but I think in this industry that's sort of best. If you plan too early in advance, you need to change your plans anyway. So I'd rather just wait till we get to the new year and then decide what I'm going to go and do.
Sounds like it will be a holiday to try and focus yourself forward. A couple of fan questions, by the way, James, before we let you go. One, out of all the racing cars you've driven in the real world, which one is your favorite?
Definitely. I mean, I've not driven many. I think I've driven about 3 or 4, or maybe 5 if you can include the Race of Champions. But definitely the McLaren 720 GT3. By a mile. I've never driven anything anywhere near that quick. In the corners, on the brakes, acceleration, the way it feels, the noise. It's just unbelievable. I mean, I have put a video on my YouTube channel of the helmet cam of driving through Spa at night, and that sort of gives you an idea of what it's like. But the feeling you get, the G-force, is just unbelievable.
And I would recommend his YouTube channel. I enjoy watching some of those videos, both
Yes.
from real world and esports stuff. There we go. And aside from the McLaren on ACC, what is another favorite car sim combo of yours? I think this from one of your big fans, Luca.
Wait, say again. Favorite car and track combo?
Combos in Simbo. In sim racing, rather. Sorry.
Simbo. I don't know. Probably. I don't know. I mean, Suzuka's my favorite track, closely followed by Brands Hatch. And to be honest with you, the McLaren 720S GT3 on a sim, I'm extremely bored of driving because I've driven it for 2 years in a row. So if I do ACC stuff again, like say SRO next year, I'm not even sure I'll take the McLaren, to be honest. Like, just from a excitement point of view, I want something new. So I don't know what car and track combo, to be honest. I just know that the McLaren sort of is my favourite car, well, at least in real life, and then Suzuka and Brands Hatch are my favourite tracks. Not really thought about combo.
And one final one, because I really like this question as well. How do you stay motivated in esports? I always wonder with, drivers having to, like you say, drive day in and day out and grind so much. How do you stay, motivated to be at the top of your game?
I don't know. I mean, it's probably sort of a natural thing, the motivation. You either have it or you don't. You can't force yourself to be motivated. What you can do, some days everyone doesn't wake up feeling motivated. You just sort of got to force your way through it occasionally. But like the fact that I can do this as a job, and there's more and more people every day really doing this as a job, or getting salaries or whatever. It could be a hell of a lot worse. Like, before I was doing this, I was working in an engineering role that I actually quite enjoyed. But before that, I was doing some, apprentice work. And when you compare this to doing that, I don't want to go back to that. I want to stay doing this or something better. That's why I grind, like crazy every day, is because, I know what it's like to not be doing this. And this is like a dream job. I know it's not real racing, but it's still racing. It's same skill set, same mindset. You're basically, you live the life of sort of like an athlete, and you compete to win races, and it's unreal, and hopefully the scene grows to get even bigger and bigger. But yeah, I mean, I sort of lost my train of thought now, but that's the general gist of it.
I really like that answer, and I think the reality is you're not going to wake up every morning and want to spend 6 hours in the sim sometimes.
No.
You'll have to force yourself to do so. Thank you so much for your time once again, James. Hopefully it's not another 856 days before we talk to you, but I'm sure we'll have a lot to talk about when we do so. Thank you for joining us live on the VCO Twitch and the VCO Twitter, or on your favorite podcast platform. We'll be back hopefully next week with another fantastic guest from the world of sim racing. Don't forget, the final of the VCO Grand Slams is this Saturday, as Radio Show Limited and RaceBot TV partnered up to bring you uninterrupted coverage of the Suzuka 10 Hours, yet another iRacing special event brought to you by VCO. On behalf of the team at VCO, for Mike Howe and for myself, Arjuna Kankipati, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time. For now, so long, and race on.